Have you ever asked yourself, what truly makes a peaceful life after turning 70? In this video, I want to share 11 powerful things I've learned to let go of things that have transformed my later years into a journey filled with peace, joy, and a quiet sense of purpose. Many people, even after crossing 70, still carry old burdens with them. Unspoken anger, lingering regrets, or expectations that no longer fit the life they're living. And they quietly wonder, why do I still feel tired when I no longer have to chase after anything? The truth is, the longer we live, the more we tend to hold on. But sometimes it's exactly those things we're holding on to that are silently weighing us down. A single word of blame toward ourselves, a habit that no longer serves us, a feeling we don't need to carry anymore. But here's what I want you to know. It's never too late to let go. Letting go isn't about losing. It's about becoming free. Free to feel light again. Free to live these later years with the calm, the softness, and the dignity we truly deserve. In this video, I'll walk alongside you as one older soul to another and share 11 things that, if you find the courage to release, can turn these years from a slow wait into a quiet, meaningful chapter of your life. If you're ready, let's begin. This journey won't start by adding more. It begins gently by setting down the things that no longer belong. There was a time in my life when I believed that caring meant correcting, reminding, adjusting, keeping a watchful eye on how others were living. But over the years, I've come to see something deeper, that no matter how much I worry or try, some things are simply beyond my reach. The more I tried to guide others toward what I thought was right, the more distance I seemed to create between us. These later years, they're not meant for tightening our grip on the world around us. They're meant for gently stepping back to observe with compassion and to love by letting others be who they are. Because in the end, no one can live another's life. Each person walks their own path, with their own lessons, their own pain, their own way through. The urge to control often comes from a place of love, but if we're not careful, that love can feel like pressure, judgment, or quiet suffocation. In this chapter of life, being right isn't what matters most. What matters is closeness. Closeness built on quiet understanding, on letting go of the need to fix, on simply allowing someone to be themselves. And when we release that urge to control, we open space for something even more precious: connection. Connection nurtured by respect and calm has a way of healing both us and those around us, especially in these final, tender years. So if you're still here listening, maybe take a moment to reflect. Is there something or someone you've been holding on to too tightly, and if you let go, just a little, might it bring peace instead of loss? If you feel like sharing, I'd love to hear your thoughts below. Sometimes, what you're ready to release today may be exactly what someone else needed to hear tomorrow. And once we've learned to loosen our grip on others, we may also find it easier to release something just as heavy: our habit of worrying about what others think. There's something I came to understand after turning 70. No one lives long enough in your life to fully understand all of you. And honestly, no one is obligated to. Sometimes, the things people say, they don't come from knowing you deeply, but from glancing at your life through their own lens, colored by their memories, their judgments, their limitations. And yet, we let those words shake us. Have you ever done that? Heard one small comment and thought about it all afternoon? Caught a disapproving look and wondered, did I do something wrong? In our younger years, we were more easily affected, but by now, we should have learned that other people's opinions aren't a mirror reflecting the truth of who we are. Not everyone will understand us. Not everyone will see us clearly. And at some point, we have to stop letting that matter so much. It's not about becoming cold or indifferent. It's about protecting the peace within us. Trying to please everyone is a path that leads nowhere. But choosing to live in alignment with your own heart, that's something we can do every single day. Because at this age, freedom no longer means going far or doing much. It means daring to be yourself even when others disagree, even when no one claps. The less we obsess over external approval, the more we begin to hear something quieter, but truer, the voice inside us, the one we lost touch with, under layers of doubt, comparison, and the need to be accepted. My friend, if you've ever felt the weight of trying too hard to please others, maybe it's time to set that weight down and give yourself permission to live softer, at the rhythm your soul longs for. Are you still carrying someone's glance or someone's words that deep down, you know you could have let go of long ago? If so, you're not alone. And if you feel like sharing, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Because once we stop worrying so much about others' opinions, we finally make space to turn inward, and that's when we become ready for one of the most compassionate things we can ever do: to offer forgiveness, not to anyone else, but to ourselves. Some memories, the more we try to forget them, the more they stay. Not because they were beautiful, but because they linger like a quiet scratch on the heart. Small, but over time, they wear you down. In our younger years, it was easy to hold anger. We wanted to be understood. We needed others to see what we didn't know how to say out loud. But now, after living through so much, we come to realize some things don't need to be made right. They just need to be over. I've carried my share of resentment, some of it toward family, some toward old friends, and some from words spoken long ago that left a wound. At first, I thought holding on to that pain would help me remember the lesson. But over time, I realized I was the one carrying the heaviest weight. Resentment doesn't change the other person. It doesn't fix the past. It only drains the present, clouding sleep, dulling joy, and coloring the few precious days we have left with sadness. Letting go isn't surrender. It's not saying what happened was okay. It's simply telling yourself, I don't want to replay this pain in my heart anymore. Forgiveness isn't about whether someone else deserves it. It's about knowing you deserve peace. And when we begin to release that old weight, we make room for softer things: a calm conversation, a quiet morning without heaviness, an afternoon where laughter doesn't bring back hurt. My friend, if there's something in your heart left unsaid, if there's someone who still brings a shadow to your thoughts, take a slow breath and ask yourself, what does holding on to this really give me? If you feel ready to share, I'll be here, reading in the comments. Sometimes just speaking it out loud is already halfway toward letting it go. And when that burden has finally lifted, you'll have space inside to see something else clearly, that nothing in life needs to be perfect. Not other, not yourself. Not even this life we're learning to live, one quiet day at a time. There was a time in my life when I believed if I just tried hard enough, everything would fall into place. That the family would stay close, that the children would understand my heart, that good habits could hold off the wear and tear of aging. But life, it rarely unfolds the way we imagine. And the truth is, it was never meant to be perfect in the first place. Have you ever felt exhausted from trying to hold everything together, trying to keep the peace in your family, trying to keep the house always in order, trying to keep a smile on your face even when your heart feels tangled inside? The more we demand perfection, the more we meet quiet disappointment. Because no matter our age, life will always have loose ends. It might be a relationship still waiting for healing, a physical pain that's growing harder to ignore, or a quiet ache as we look back on the road we've traveled. But something soft begins to happen when we simply sit down, stop forcing, and allow ourselves to say, some things were never meant to be perfect, and that's okay. That moment is where real maturity begins. Not the kind that looks polished on the outside, but the kind that lets us treasure even the messy, incomplete parts of life. Peace doesn't come from perfect conditions. It comes from gratitude for what is still here, even if it's not what we expected. An old friend once told me, just surviving is already enough. Everything else is how we choose to feel about it. And I believe that's true. If you've been feeling tired from trying to get everything just right, maybe now is a good time to pause. Look around and whisper gently to yourself, this is enough. Is there something you've been holding on to, refusing to enjoy? Just because it didn't turn out perfect, if you feel like sharing, I invite you to write it below. Because your words today might be the comfort someone else has been quietly waiting for. And once we release the need for perfection, we can also release the guilt of what never went as planned, which brings us gently towards something just as important: learning to forgive, not others, but ourselves. At some point in life, I think we've all whispered the same question to ourselves: if only I had done it differently. Maybe it was a rushed decision, a careless word that hurt someone we love, or simply a quiet regret for not spending enough time on what truly mattered. When we were younger, we thought time was endless, but as the years pass, we begin to understand just how precious each day really is. And sometimes, that realization brings a lingering ache. I carried that ache for years, blaming myself for not being more patient, for not seeing what mattered until it was too late, for not always being the best version of who I wanted to be. But eventually, I realized blame doesn't change the past. It only makes the present heavier and dims the future before it even arrives. The truth is, we did the best we could with the understanding, the strength, and the circumstances we had at the time. If we couldn't do better back then, what good does blaming ourselves now really do? Forgiving yourself isn't about making excuses. It's an act of courage. It's looking directly at where we fell short, not to deny it, but to hold that part of ourselves gently and say, that's enough now. It's time to let go. Because if we don't learn to be gentle with ourselves, who else will? We don't have endless time to keep carrying the same regrets. What we do have is the chance, right now, to begin living a little more kindly toward ourselves. Each meal, each sleep, each quiet morning is an invitation to heal the parts of us that still ache. If there's something you haven't yet forgiven yourself for, pause for a moment and place a hand over your heart. As long as it's still beating, you still have the right to live differently, to live better, to live softer than you did yesterday. Have you ever blamed yourself for something in the past? If so, I invite you to share it, because your honesty today might just be the comfort someone else has been waiting for. And once we've learned to be gentle with ourselves, we may also find it easier to let go of something else, the material things we've clung to. Long after their meaning has faded, at some point in life, we begin to notice that the objects around us no longer hold the same meaning they once did. It's not that we've grown cold or indifferent. It's just that after a long journey of collecting, storing, and holding on, we begin to see that some things remain, not because we need them, but simply because we're used to them. Many of us, after 70 or 80, still hold on to a house full of belongings, partly because it feels wasteful to throw them out, partly because we think, I might need that someday. But the real weight we carry isn't the item itself. It's the memory tied to it, the attachment, the years we've spent thinking, this is part of me. And yet those very items, if we're not careful, begin to take up more than just physical space. They take up emotional space too. The more we keep, the harder it becomes to clear, and slowly, our minds start to mirror the clutter. I used to think I had to keep it all as if that would help preserve the past, but in time I learned something softer. The past doesn't live in things. It lives in memory, in the stories we carry, in the love we still feel. When we begin to let go of material clutter, we don't lose anything of value. In fact, we gain something precious: space to breathe, room to rest, and a lighter spirit. And more than anything, we free up time and attention for what still truly matters: a quiet cup of tea, a phone call with an old friend, an afternoon without hurry. Freedom, at this stage of life, doesn't come from having more. It comes from no longer being held hostage by what we no longer need. And that feeling of living in a space that's calm, uncluttered, and restful is one of the greatest gifts we can give our aging soul. Dear friend, perhaps in your home there are still items you haven't used in years. And maybe today is the right moment to choose something simpler, something lighter. If you've ever gone through this yourself, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And once we learn to gently release what we no longer need on the outside, we may also begin to soften our grip on the inside, even when it comes to something many of us quietly resist: the fear of change. There's something I've learned over many years of living. No matter how carefully we prepare, Life always finds a way to change in ways we never saw coming. And the older we get, the more uneasy we become about those changes. Not because we're weak, but because after so many years of familiarity, anything new can feel unsettling, like we've lost our sense of direction. Old routines, familiar objects. The rhythm of each day, they offer comfort. They feel safe. So when we're asked to change even something as small as a new phone, or switching a doctor's appointment to an app, or watching a familiar neighbor move away, it's easy to feel anxious, to withdraw, to shut the door and stay inside where things aren't moving quite so fast. But over time, I realized something: change is not the enemy. It only feels scary when we resist it instead of walking alongside it, slowly and gently. At 70, 80 years old, we don't have to keep up with the times. We don't have to master every gadget or follow every trend. We just need to keep an open heart. We just need the willingness to learn one small thing. The courage to say, I don't know yet, but I'm willing to try. When we meet something new with curiosity instead of fear, we realize we're still alive, still growing, even in these later years. And that feeling is different. It's not heavy. It's not shameful. It's light, refreshing, a quiet reminder that our spirit can feel just a bit younger each day. Maybe you faced a change recently that made you feel unsure. If so, you're not alone. But I hope, after hearing this, you'll see that every change, when approached with calm and openness, can become a gift, waiting quietly to reveal itself. If you've experienced a change that surprised you, but later brought gratitude, I invite you to share it in the comments. Your story might be the encouragement someone else needs today. And once we learn to walk with change, we begin to soften our judgments toward the younger generation, who are living life in a way that's very different from our own. And in that softening, we find the first step toward acceptance, not just of life, but of the people we love within it. There's something quiet we tend to do almost without noticing. We place our life next to someone else's and quietly begin to feel less than, a little behind, a little left out. No one forces us to do it. Yet still, we find ourselves asking, why can't I have what they have? Why are their children so successful while mine still struggle? How is it that at this age, I still feel like something's missing? But perhaps the deepest comparisons aren't with other people. They're with ourselves, from years ago. I used to be stronger than this. I used to be sharp, capable, dependable. I used to be the one holding everyone else together. And all of that may be true. But the more tightly we hold on to who we used to be, the more we risk quietly resenting who we are now, as if the present version of ourselves is somehow less. But here's the truth. Life is not a race. It's not about winning or losing. It's a personal journey. Each one of us was born into a different story, shaped by different challenges, called to different roles along the way. You don't have to be like anyone else, and you don't have to cling to who you used to be either. If you can feel a moment of peace right now, in this moment, then you are already living this part of your life exactly as you should. Wholeness doesn't come from how much we have. It comes from no longer needing more to feel content. And when we release the habit of comparison, we begin to see life through gentler eyes. We treat ourselves with more kindness. And that kindness begins to extend naturally to others. 2. Dear friend, if you've ever felt stuck in comparison, whether to others or to your younger self, I invite you to share something in the comments. Sometimes, just one honest sentence can lift the weight off someone else's heart. And when we stop comparing, we finally have space inside to reflect on the relationships around us, especially the ones we've held on to for too long. Even when they've quietly begun to hurt more than they heal, there's something quiet that many people don't like to talk about. It's the weariness that settles in when we're around someone and our heart no longer feels at ease. In our younger years, we often tried to preserve every relationship out of fear of loss, out of habit, or simply because we believed we had to endure things just to keep the peace. But as we grow older, we begin to realize something deeper. Not everyone is meant to walk with us all the way to the end. Some relationships, they may have started with deep love, family ties, or shared history. But over time, as understanding fades, as respect quietly disappears, what once felt nourishing can slowly turn into a silent burden on the soul. Have you ever kept your feelings inside just to avoid conflict, whispered to yourself, let it go? It's better to keep the family calm, and then found yourself lying awake at night with a heart that knows it's still hurting. Forgiveness is one thing, but continuing to stay in a relationship that drains you is something else entirely. Letting go doesn't have to mean cutting someone off completely. It can simply mean stepping back enough to protect your peace, not out of anger, not out of bitterness, but out of love for your own well-being. You have every right to prioritize your emotional health, especially now, when time is more precious than ever. And you do not have to feel guilty for that. Being kind to others doesn't mean forgetting to be kind to yourself. If someone in your life leaves you feeling heavy every time you see them, listen to your body, to your heart. Set boundaries, softly, not to shut them out, but to let yourself breathe again. Do you carry a relationship in your heart that still causes you pain? If so, you're not alone. And if you feel safe to share, I'm here, ready to listen. Because sometimes, saying it out loud is the first step toward healing. And when we've learned to gently release what no longer fits, we create room inside ourselves to keep what truly matters, like peace in the morning, or a quiet conversation with someone who sees us as we are. And that begins by learning to listen to what we feel inside without hiding it away like we used to. There's a habit many of us carry quietly throughout our lives. The habit of staying silent, not because we have nothing to say, but because somewhere along the way, we started to believe what's the point in saying it out loud when we were younger. We were taught to hold back anything that looked like weakness, to stay strong, to avoid burdening others, to never be a bother. And over time, we simply grew used to holding it all in the sadness, the disappointment, the quiet loneliness that sometimes lingers in empty afternoons. But growing older does not mean we must grow harder. It doesn't mean we have to hide what we're feeling. In fact, this season of life might be the most important time to allow ourselves to live honestly with what's happening inside. You have the right to feel sad, the right to feel a little hollow, the right to sigh deeply because something or someone you loved is now gone. You also have the right to say, I'm not doing okay right now, and not feel the need to apologize for it. Because when we dare to speak, to share, to open our hearts, we give ourselves a real chance to feel lighter. Feelings, when held in too long, turn into silent exhaustion, but when they're understood, they become bridges connecting us with the people who truly care. I used to think, I'm old now. Who would really care about what I'm feeling? But the first time I spoke honestly, I felt something lift. Not because anyone fixed anything, but because just being heard was healing in itself. If there's something you're carrying, an old sorrow, a word you never got to say to someone you love, try letting it out. Even if it's just one line on paper or a whisper to yourself. You don't have to be strong all the time. You only have to be honest with yourself. And that, my friend, is enough. If this part touched something in you, I invite you to leave a comment, just a word, to let me know you're still here, quietly walking through life's pages with me, like two old friends. And when our emotions no longer live in hiding, when our hearts have learned to speak truthfully, we become ready to embrace the final message, one that many believe is too late to begin again. But in truth, just one small step might change everything. Some mornings, I wake up, look out the window, and quietly wonder, is it still possible to begin something new even after most of life has already passed over the years? I've heard others say it, and truthfully, I've said it myself. I'm too old now. What else can I do? It sounds like a small sentence, but when repeated often in your heart, it begins to feel heavy. At this age, it's easy to feel surrounded by the sense that time is running short. We hesitate when we want to change. We hold back when we want to try again. And so many dreams are set aside with the quiet belief it's already too late. But, dear friend, there's one gentle truth I've learned through all these years. As long as we wake up in the morning, it's not too late. Not too late to learn something new. Not too late to change an old habit, to begin a gentler rhythm, to treat ourselves with more kindness. Not too late to forgive ourselves or someone else. Not too late to smile at the person beside us or to begin a quiet friendship. Even now, aging is not the end of choice. It's the chance to choose again, not because we have to, not because someone else expects us to, but because deep inside, we know what brings us peace. I understand starting again is not easy, especially when everything feels familiar and the body no longer moves like it used to. But change at this stage of life doesn't need to be big. It could be as simple as waking up each day and asking, what's one thing I could do differently today? Just a little better than yesterday. Just one step, one shift in thought, one soft opening of the heart. If there's something you've always wanted to do or say or try, but you've been hesitating because you thought it was too late, consider this your quiet reminder. You still have time, and every day you're alive is a day worth cherishing. Have you ever started something when you thought it was already too late? If you feel like sharing, I'm here to listen. And maybe, just maybe, your story will help someone else find the courage to take their first step too. Because when we begin to truly believe that it's never too late, we also begin to see aging differently, not as something to endure, but as a season in which we are still very much alive. Dear friend, at a certain age, we no longer chase after big, grand things. All we truly hope for is for each day to pass peacefully. No more burdens to carry, no more proving to anyone who we are. What I've shared with you today is not meant to urge immediate change, nor to say we were wrong for holding on to these things for so many years. It's simply this: if today you feel just a little tired inside, then maybe it's time to gently release something, not because you're giving up, but because you're ready to live more freely with yourself. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean cutting off. It's just a quiet way to become a little lighter so that peace has a place to return to. Because at 70 or 80, happiness is no longer about how much we have. It's about how little weighs on our hearts. One less grudge, one less unspoken word, one less relationship that quietly drains us, and that alone can make the journey feel softer. If you're still here, I truly cherish this moment where the two of us can sit, listen, and reflect on a slower, deeper way of living. You're welcome to share a few thoughts in the comments. Or if you feel this video might touch someone you love, send it their way as a gentle reminder that it's never too late to feel a little lighter. And if you don't know what to write at all, just leave the word peace, so I'll know you're still here walking beside me on this quiet path toward a life that feels more meaningful, one day at a time.